He has, on several occasions, surprised us, shocked the world with his stories. Lee Jenkins is now joining us. The letter from LeBron James. So what do you make of that video right there, Lee?
That is Draymond Green being Draymond Green. It's like it can't ever be calm. He has to inject chaos into everything. That's what it was for them last year. That's what it is again this year. But yeah, I think that he is sometimes difficult for players to play with. I think any of the Warriors would say that. And I don't know that Kevin Durant was used to Russell Westbrook, and he probably thought he was getting away from some of that when he went to Golden State. You know, he thought they were all holding hands and kumbaya. But Draymond Green is every bit kind of a crusty motivator leader that Russell Westbrook is.
And KD says the media has created this Westbrook feud, which listen, when he left for Golden State, he basically came out and said they play basketball the way it's supposed to be played, which was a not so thinly veiled shot at Westbrook. Right. So what do you make of the KD Westbrook feud? Because I think there's something there. There's some discomfort between the two.
Yeah, I think KD would love for that to be the case, for it to be a media-created feud, for it to go away, for them to have this kind of hug and kiss moment before a game. And Colin, I don't think you'll ever see it. I think Westbrook was very hurt by what happened, and I don't know that he'll ever get over it. I mean, this is someone who is extremely loyal until crossed. And I think that a lot of people, myself included, felt that it was kind of a media-created feud. And then once everything happened last summer, you realized you heard things that made you believe that it wasn't. And there were things said in that meeting with the Warriors. The Warriors came away believing that Kevin Durant did not want to play basketball anymore with Russell Westbrook, and that is what they had to sell. More than Steve Nash being a consultant, more than Steph Curry or Klay Thompson, that he wanted to get away from Russell Westbrook.
I mean, now the divorce has happened. Yeah. And I think Russell's a little bit more unhinged, technicals up, more three-pointers, shooting down. Obviously, it's worked for KD on a lot of levels. But at some point, where does this end for Russell Westbrook? Because KD didn't want to play for him. So do you want to be unhinged guy? Do you want to be a Marbury? But at some point, doesn't Westbrook have to go, whew, deep breath, I need to win games.
Right.
Because right now, this divorce, one guy, they call it winning the divorce. Like LeBron's won the divorce twice. Looks like KD won the divorce.
So this is where there's a personal evolution here. You go back to Kobe, right? For a year or two, I think Kobe enjoyed it. I think he enjoyed taking all those shots, putting up those numbers. And then, yes, you get to that point where you want to win. So the question will be,
divorce, yeah.
Can Westbrook recruit those kind of players? Can he attract those kind of players? I know you believe that he probably can.
I think great scorers in this league are concerned, and I saw it with Marbury. Marbury would end with 8 assists, but they didn't come at the right time.
Right.
Like late in quarters, late in games, Marbury took the shots. So my gut feeling is he won't. Now, I will say this, Lee. I do think James Harden has really impressed me this year. He's never going to be a great defender, but I see more effort. I think his distribution's been noticeably better. I think Harden, like Westbrook, I think James has sort of moved to a different place. That's my interpretation. So I do think he could get a star.
But that team was put together for a while, and Daryl Morey put shooters around Harden, and that whole team was put together with Harden in mind so that he could be everything. He's the sun and moon for them. He's the passer and he's the scorer. Sam Presti, now the onus is on him, the Oklahoma City general manager, as it was on Daryl Morey, to find a team, to put together a team around Westbrook that shows that one guy can win. Is this possible? I mean, that's what we're taking out Golden State, taking out a team with 4 stars when you have 1. That's essentially what Houston's trying to do, what Oklahoma City's trying to do. It's a tall task. I don't even know if it's possible.
So yesterday, odd move, Phil Jackson, what do you call those, Kristine, subtweeting or something?
Subtweets.
A subtweet is taking a shot cryptically on Twitter. Random, odd, I've never seen a GM take a shot at a player. What was your takeaway?
Naive, too. I mean, you need leverage at this point. We're heading to the trading deadline. They clearly want to deal this guy. Colin, I don't know if they're trying to shame him at this point, make the relationship so untenable that he has to waive his no-trade clause, essentially. But Phil Jackson's leverage now is nil. I think the league knows that he's desperate to move Carmelo Anthony. And are we at the point where Carmelo Anthony is a salary dump? Is that where we are now? Because they're not going to get Kevin Love for him. They're not going to get a superstar or comparable talent. We may be at the point where his value is such that a team like Houston, a team like the Clippers, that you take a shot. And I know you're not a huge fan of of Carmelo, value for value, star for star.
Clippers is an interesting.
But when the value gets as low as it may get right now, if that market sinks that low, I think those teams that just have their eye on Golden State, that feel like they need to take a risk in order to make a run at that, they have to look at Carmelo.
Yeah, I think Carmelo to the Clippers is the one where they've had chemistry issues. They're not going to beat Golden State 4 times in 14 days. 3 years ago, that was an interesting game. Right. The Clay and the Steph and the Chris Paul and the Blake. It's not anymore. It's interesting. I was so I saw this move, and I've got friends with the Lakers, but they hired Magic. And I've seen this so much. Lee Jenkins, Sports Illustrated senior writer, joining us. I've seen this all through sports. Is that when organizations don't have a point of view, they reach into their bag of history.
Right.
And I've seen, your Alabama footballs do it. I grew up in Seattle, where for 10 years after Don James, they just kept hiring anybody that had shaken hands with Don James.
Hire the old linebacker.
Right. That's what they do. And I look at the Magic Johnson move, and I say to myself, so you hired Byron Scott. Yeah. Why don't you go out and get an executive? Get somebody that's an international scout. Magic now is part of the Lakers. Seems to me it's more about optics than operations. Like, what do you make of that move?
They needed a face of the franchise, they felt. They need someone in those free agent meetings with some gravity. I felt like Luke Walton kind of gave them that. I thought he could be the face of the franchise before a player becomes the face of the franchise, because I think teams believe, this goes back to the Pat Riley playbook, that you need someone in the room, that they need some free agent weight. Magic Johnson clearly will give them that, along with Luke Walton. But I agree with you, Colin. I think that organization needs someone to come in and take a cultural look at where they are at the business side versus the basketball side, at what they're going to actually tell free agents, how you're going to lure them. Now, they've actually, in a weird way, they've done some good things in the last few years. All the free agents they missed were basically blessings. Missing Carmelo, missing Dwight, those were blessings. All of the draft picks they've had, D'Angelo Russell, right, you would have had Porzingis. You would have wanted Porzingis. But other than that,
they're all
this
fine.
guy Zubats, Clarkson,
they're NBA
they
players.
Haven't messed them up.
Yeah, they're all
haven't
C
messed
plus
up the
to be
draft.
up. Brandon Ingram will eventually, I think, be something special.
And this Zubats guy was probably a steal. They've done well. Larry Nance late in the first round.
Yes.
So it's not as though their scouting's been a mess, but they need someone to kind of rejigger the whole way that organization looks from the top down, and Magic Johnson probably isn't the guy to do it. You're right. It was so reminiscent of Byron Scott, of SC going and getting the old linebacker, or going and getting John Robinson back, right?
Lee Jenkins, Sports Illustrated senior writer. You have a very good relationship with LeBron James, who largely has gotten testier with the media over time, needs them less perhaps, so it's indicative of some of his comments. So he called Frank Isola trash. He took shots at Barkley. I can make the argument that he almost likes this conflict. It creates a little bit of energy for a team that's sort of waiting for the finals. What do you make of his, if not increased crankiness or hostility toward media figures? What do you make of it?
There's always some seasonal disorder that goes on in Cleveland, I feel like, about this time of year. It's just every winter. This happens with him, whether it's Twitter or media or whatever it is. Colin, I think there's frustration, there's urgency. This is someone who sees his window high def. I mean, he sees how closely he is kind of, to the back end of his career, and he sees the Warriors. He sees the Warriors right there, and I think there's frustration when his team isn't playing to the level that he believes can match the Warriors down the road, and I think that frustration comes out in various ways. But I also think you're right that there's some calculation in some of what he does.
I think there's some.
He is such a product of Miami in so many ways, and of Pat Riley, and that feeling like even if adversity's not there, it has to be invented, even if it's contrived, that teams need to go through something. You look at the Warriors, and they don't believe that. They're philosophically opposed to that.
They're very California, kumbaya.
They are, and they're all those guys. They're coaches. Everybody's from SoCal, San Diego, or LA, and Pacific Palisades coach, and they are kumbaya. And what LeBron believes is that teams need to be tempered steel by June. And last year, you could say it proved him right. This year, we'll see. I mean, looking at the Cavs right now, looking at the Warriors, it doesn't look like much of a match. I mean, the Warriors look like the team that's going to win it all this year. It looks like a foregone conclusion. But there's something about the Cavaliers. There's like a wild card element to them constantly that comes across in these strange confrontations, in these dramas. You feel like there's an emotional component to them. They're always a little bit unhinged, and that, I think, is what makes them it makes them combustible. It also makes them still dangerous.
Lee Jenkins, Sports Illustrated senior writer, very thoughtful, obviously. I grew up with the NBA. So I grew up and I had my Sonics and I had my Blazers, and I was actually a Laker fan when they had Elmore Smith. I mean, I'm an old NBA fan. I loved old video. I didn't collect baseball cards. I collected NBA cards. So I was an NBA fan really, really early. One of the things, and I talked to David Stern about this once, and somebody asked me the other day if I could have an hour guest, who would it be? And I said Adam Silver. Here's what I don't understand about the NBA. And I think what the NFL does is they constantly instill hope that if you land Tony Romo, you're viable if you have drafted well over the previous 5 seasons. So the NBA and their CBA blocks a lot of trades. They make it difficult to trade. You have to match salaries. In one instance here, you couldn't have Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin on the same roster because of a kind of obscure CBA issue. The NBA is doing this because they're afraid of tanking and utter dominance. But yet they're the only team in pro sports now where we have absolute tanking and we have too much dominance.
Right.
Could I not make the argument that allowing a team to rebuild/tanking is just part of the American business process? We've seen it in all sports, and it's okay. Pittsburgh and Kansas City for years got those picks. Now, Kansas City and Pittsburgh are very, very good baseball teams. Only way they can survive because they don't have the cable money to play with the Yankees. That the NBA is too paralyzed by the fear of tanking and dominance, and it's hurting their product because the team now, there's 22 teams with very little hope to win a title.
Right. Everything they've done was in order to avoid the situation that they're basically in.
Exactly.
They tried to prop up small markets. Kevin Durant left the small market that was probably the best small market to go to Golden State. They've tried to have parity, and now they have no parity. They essentially have 2 teams that are going to make the finals for the foreseeable future.
Right.
And then you have these interesting sideshows. Westbrook, Harden, spectacular individuals have basically no chance of winning the championship. So I agree from when we sit here talking about it, from writing about it, the NBA is not as interesting because of these 2 teams. However, if you take kind of a more cosmic look at it, international fans, the casual fan, this is what Lakers Celtics was, right? This is what the Bulls were when you had these dominant teams. The NBA is kind of risen on the backs of these dominant superpowers.
So that's my argument. I'm for superpowers. The problem is now we only have 2. But I'm for them. I want teams and owners to say, I'm starting over.
Right.
Don't you think sometimes, if I could sit with Adam Silver, what are you afraid of?
Well, they were all doing that, and then last year, it probably just happened last summer. All of these teams, the Orlandos and the Lakers, and they all decided they weren't going to tank anymore. That they wanted to go for it. That they couldn't put their fans through another year of it. That it had sort of gone on too long. So now you have fewer teams tanking, and more teams should be. Should the Heat? Is it in their best interest right now to win 11 in a row? You can argue that. You can argue the Knicks. Should they even be trying to win? Should they have been trying to get all these veterans, Mozgov, Deng for the Lakers? Probably mistakes. Those teams, those individual franchises probably should have raced to the bottom.
Yeah, and for the record, I think it's better for the league. Orlando was more interesting with Shaq. No, he left.
Right.
Orlando was more interesting with a young Dwight Howard. Tanking means hopeless market, get superstar. I don't think that's the worst business practice.
But you said earlier, selling hope. How many years can you sell that hope?
In Phoenix, I have a friend who's a Phoenix Suns season ticket holder. Devin Booker's terrific.
Right.
He's like, we have no chance to win the title for 8 years.
Right, that's right.
Arizona Cardinals had a bad year. Land Romo, everybody in that town thinks they're in.
Right.
I think that's a real problem. I know Bob Iger at Disney, which owns my former employer, he has voiced, from what I've been told by people I trust, he has voiced a concern that we have a 10-year contract here. We got 2 teams. I mean, there is a parity issue in this league. I
remember the day Chris Paul, the day that trade got vetoed, someone in the Laker organization said, probably set us back 8 to 10 years.
So the Lakers
Here
knew
we
that.
are. It's year 6.
And they're not even close.
Not even close.
Not even close.
Yeah.
I think they have one potential. I don't think D'Angelo Russell's a star. I think Brandon Ingram is.